Number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 272 of Sports Card Nation. Happy to be back. Enjoyed my week off from school, winter break. Got a lot of stuff done around the house, the studio, content creation-wise. Really got caught up. For those that don't know, I'm taking some college courses to advance my employment. So got a little ahead of schedule there as well. So far, so good in that category as well. So got a great guest today, Mr. Gio Balistreri, fellow Brooklynite, now out of New Jersey, does a great blog that I am a fan of, a longtime blog called Gio, WTH Balls, short for What the Heck Tops, or What You Know What Tops. And one thing I love about Gio, like I like about a lot of people, right, kind of just gives his opinion, says what's on his mind, doesn't mince words. He's been in the hobby over 40 years like myself, so has seen a lot of stuff. He does some great custom work of cards that were never made that should have been. And even designed his own podcast guest card for this show and did a great job, better than I could. So really enjoyed talking to him for the first time, and won't be the last time he's on. We'll have him back on again. I think you'll enjoy the conversation. So with that being said, let's start the show.
Hobby News Daily is your homepage of the hobby, providing original writing, exclusive gem rate data, a daily morning minute podcast, and some of the best content creators in the hobby. Remember, hobbynewsdaily.com and at Hobby News Daily on social. Happy collecting!
All right, happy to have the next gentleman on the Sports Card Shop guest line. He is the author of a blog that I love to check out and read. But so without further ado, Gio of the WTH Balls blog, welcome.
Thank you for having me. That was quite an introduction, man. That is some production, man.
Yeah. And that's all, like I always say, it's all downhill after that. But I appreciate you coming on. Before we get into the blog and other things, kind of the standard first time on this particular podcast question, kind of when did the hobby start for you? Kind of go back and when that was and how it all came about.
Well, now that I found out that we have that Brooklyn connection, you can appreciate mid 70s, 6-7 years old, like so you figure 76 really for me. Going to the candy store, seeing those 20-cent wax packs, and you start buying. And as a kid in Brooklyn at the time, every kid was into sports, so cards were everywhere. And luckily, I had my cousin Anthony, who's a few years older than me, but he was from Yonkers, but he was, a few years ahead. So he was really into cards and he got me into it. And honestly, by the time 77, that's when I really started chasing to complete a set. 78 is, I just dove right in, and it's been my one great thread through life. No matter where life's taken me, no matter what I've done, cards, baseball, more specifically, it's always been that comfort for me. And there was nothing like March, April when those new cards came out. And, I got to a point in my neighborhood where the candy store would call my house when the cards came in for the first time. And my mom would just tell me, the candy store called, and I'd be there in 2 minutes. It was right up the block. So for me, it was, I was also into football, hockey, basketball, and I collected those cards. But for me, baseball was always first and foremost. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I was 79 tops, Gio. Again, corner store. I was raised by my grandparents in Brooklyn, and my grandfather said, "Hey, I got to go to the corner store. You want to go?" And I love going places with my grandfather, so I went. Like you said, too, it's a great point. Growing up in New York City at that time, you were just almost like indoctrinated to be a sports fan.
Yeah.
Oh, just whatever teams you followed. And even at 7 years old in 1979, I was already a sports fan. I remember I had some Jaws cards. I didn't get packs. Someone had just given them to me, like, "Hey, you want these?" So I knew about cards per se, but not. I hadn't opened a pack yet. So I'll make this story shorter. I went to the store with my grandfather. We're going up to the front counter to check out. And lo and behold, right on that counter was a box of 1979 Topps baseball. I saw it. And even though I hadn't opened any packs yet, I just put two and two together with the Jaws cards, seeing the baseball player on the box. I kind of figured out what they were. And I said to my grandfather, as a 7-year-old would, can I have some? Can I get some? And he goes, "Yeah, I'll get you a couple packs." And he did. And the first pack I opened, Gio, at the time, as you well know, I was a Thurman Munson kid.
Yeah.
At that point, he had already passed away. But Reggie Jackson was the toast in New York, Mr. October. And the third or fourth card in that first pack was that Reggie. And the rest is history. I was hooked. I would, my buddies who like gum more than the cards, I would give them my gum and get their cards. And, as I always joke, I got my cavities from soda instead of the gum, but I had amassed, a big card collection. But hearing you reminisce to your start, I mean, definitely hits home. The corner store, being a kid in New York at that time, for sure. You were a sports fan. It was just which teams you selected to root for, and so really. It's nice to hear you talk about that. Like you said, I didn't realize the common thread and connection we had until we kind of talked.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. And I mean, it's funny because, and it is such a memory I take with me to this day. For me, kind of along the story you just said with the Thurman Munson card. Yeah, I was a Yankee fan, still am. And by then, yes, Thurman Munson, Reggie Jackson, of course, Ron Guidry. But I'll never forget in my driveway coming back from the candy store. It's not the first pack, or maybe not even close to the first, but my first real memory of opening a pack where it just kind of like wow was I was in my parents' driveway in Bensonhurst, and I'm just looking through the cards, and one of the first cards, and this is 1977, was that all-time classic Mark Fidrich card. And I just remember just like it literally just stopped me. And I remember just looking at that card, that all-star banner, the rookie cup, and just Fidrich, man. Fidrich was everything at that moment. And I just being in awe. And man, it was my love of baseball cards, even more so than baseball. It was there to stay. And that's one of the memories I always take. Another one is the following year. This wasn't even the candy store. I'll never forget. It was the corner convenience store. And walking home with my mom, we just went to do some shopping, whatever, and walking back, and I got a pack. And one of the first cards was, to this day, one of my all-time favorites, the 78 Reggie card. And just again, like, to a kid, it's amazing how this little 2.5 by 3.5 cardboard card can have such an impact on a kid. And just seeing that card, that Reggie Jackson card, just like, wow. And it's funny because, you tap into that decades later. It's nice to be able to pick up a card and just kind of tap into that feeling and that, that warmth that it kind of makes you feel like a kid again, It
takes you back. It takes you back. It's that nostalgia moment. And, it's funny talking to people, especially from the same age. And, to me, it was almost like the heyday. I know people in the 50s and 60s will say that was, or even, But I guess wherever it started for you was the heyday for you, right?
Yeah.
And so hearing you talk about, Friedrich with the hair coming out of the side of the hat, and just definitely a unique personality. The 78 Reggie, if my memory serves me correctly, he's like just completed his swing, and he's kind of looking up at the trajectory of where the ball is going, and it just, like you said, it brings you back, and even all these years later, right? 40 years later, and we can still remember those cards as if it was yesterday. I can't remember what I ate for dinner yesterday.
Exactly.
We can remember those cards, from the 70s. That's why we're still here and still collecting. And while we may not like everything that goes on in the hobby or those sort of things,
it's a different world. I mean, it's a different world. Like when we were collecting as kids, I mean, it was really, still at the time, it was, yes, adults were collecting. There were card shows already. I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but the first card show I ever went to, I don't know if you remember, out in Sheepshead Bay, there was the Golden Gate Inn. It was this hotel.
Yeah.
And those would, they'd have their card shows. And that was the first time I finally got my dad to take me to a card show. My dad, straight up, Italian guy, blue collar, like he didn't understand anything. My obsession with cards, and finally getting him to take me to a card show, and it was one of those Golden Gate Inn shows. And even looking at him, like I remember the first time he kind of realized, wow, this isn't just like some dumb kid thing, because he was amazed at the adults and the money exchanging hands and the prices on some of this stuff. And I'm talking like 1980, maybe. And him even talking about it on the drive home, like just amazed, like it was more than just this kid hobby, or as he thought of it, like this waste of money. But then it was still child, it was child driven. Whereas now, look, I appreciate change. I get it. Although I'm generally in life averse to change, but I
think human nature, I'll defend you here too, Gio. I think humans by nature are resistant to change. I don't think that's I think that's
nowadays
just natural.
When you go to, what bums me out the most nowadays is there's nothing like that. You're heading into a weekend and you got nothing planned, so you're just like, let me go buy a box and just rip it while I'm watching the game, or I'm whatever, taking some time to relax. And that fun of ripping a box open and whatever. And that's, I don't know about you, but for me that's totally gone, because the whole nature of buying, for starters, I'm not going to pay a couple $100, a few $100 for a box of baseball cards when I could spend that money
or more
when I could easily spend that money on vintage cards, which, come on. That's, for me, there's that, as much as I don't want to tie the value into it, but if we're going to be somewhat responsible with what we're doing, if I'm going to spend a couple of $100, well, I'll buy a 1950 starter set, or, something like that, where at least I know in the long run, if I need to get rid of them, or, I've sold my collection 2 times over the years. I'm a collector. So this modern game where it's such manipulation, I feel, there's also manipulation and instant value in cards, where for me, that's not the hobby. And I get it. I mean, there are people that's what they like, and hey man, more power to you. But for me, that's not what the hobby is. How's a kid nowadays supposed to really enjoy? Like I said, when the candy store used to call my house and I'd run, I'm still a teen with my little part-time job after school, and I could still go and buy a wax box, and my sisters would be there in the kitchen, like just waiting for me to give them my little baggie of gum as I'm ripping open the packs and immediately sorting by hundreds at first. And then I'll go back and, put them all in numerical order. But I can't see a kid nowadays, unless you're kind of well off, being able to do that. That's sad,
It's it's a great point, Gio. It's tougher. A kid who's maybe on a budget will have to hit those bargain boxes and find some gems at a show and kind of do it that way. or, maybe Christmas time or birthday where they'll get that box because it's a little more expensive. I mean, it's still doable, but the degree of difficulty from our age as kids to now, it's I'll say it. I'm glad. Well, I wish I was younger, birth certificate wise, and I'm also glad I grew up at that time for the hobby's sake because it was easier to navigate the terrain and acquire cards and build a collection than it would be, being 7 years old. It was easier being a 7-year-old kid in the hobby in 1979 than it would be in 2023, 2024. And anyone that disagrees probably wasn't around in 1979. Let's just put it that way.
It was wild because think about it. Even as a, you didn't have to be a hardcore collector, but that was one of the great things. You had all these other, you had all these kids that generally weren't as obsessed with it as say guys like us. And so you just had more kids buying cards because you can actually go to the store with a quarter and buy something, and then there was also that fun where my friends were buying bags of chips and a soda. And for me, it was like, every coin I had in my pocket, I knew it was going straight to cards, like whatever it was. And now, except for say Walgreens or I don't even, it's not like you're going to walk into a convenience store bodega or something and see that box of cards by the register that when I was a kid, no matter where you went in Bensonhurst or Park Slope or Bay Ridge or whatever, it seemed like every mom and pop shop had that box of cards by the register. Like, it was great. It was everywhere and it was easy to get. And it was fun to also be with other kids and just trade and flip and, play colors and all that stuff. It's a different world. It is.
Yeah. No, you hit it right on the head, and I wouldn't change anything. While I wish I was, 30 instead of 51 again, but I still wouldn't change. I wouldn't change the era of the hobby that when I discovered the hobby. I think and you make another great point with the shows, like you said. You had the Bay Ridge Sheepshead Bay show. I remember shows in my local Catholic church had a small little show kind of in the basement. Some of the VFWs or American Legions had them as well. And, while it was, business and money was exchanging hands, it wasn't as what we know it today, where it's heavily, hey, what's this worth? Or what can I sell this for? And I don't want to be disingenuous and say it wasn't like that in the 70s either, but it wasn't the onus wasn't as much on the value. We were buying cards because we collected that team. We collected that player. And it didn't even necessarily, we might have had a favorite player that wasn't even on our favorite team. And we're trying to get what moved our meters at the time, who we like, what teams we like. And now, and people still do that now. I don't want to, but there's a little, I don't know if you'll agree. I just feel like there's a little bit less of that in today's hobby than the hobby we kind of grew up in.
I can't really put my finger on like what exactly led to these changes and stuff. But for me, like the ability, I'll give you an example. In '82, a friend of mine and I, there was a show at the Felt Forum, which was behind Madison Square Garden. Now I think it's Paramount. I forget what they call it now. But it was the Felt Forum at the time, 1982. And even as a kid, so I was, let's say, 13. If I had $50 on me, I might even be exaggerating because I was broke ass all my life. So I can't imagine I had more than that. But from Brooklyn, me and him, from Richie, taking the train, going there, paying the admission. And I'll tell you, not only was I able to get a Dave Winfield autograph, like he was there, and whatever, like, say, the latest cards were, but I bought my first T206 card, and it was Eddie Seacott, one of the band Black Sox, but it was a T206 Eddie Seacott card, and I kid you not, Of course, it wasn't in mint condition or anything, but it was this old man. He had his little stall. He had binders of cigarette cards, and I paid $1.75 for it. $1.75 for a T206. And what gets me is, of course, generally kids, they collect today, right? It's the players of today. But for those kids like me at that age that really was immediately into history of the game, I was lucky, when it came to books, my parents, they were always so happy to buy me or my sister books. And I remember, must have been around 1980, getting the Ultimate Baseball book, classic big photo book, and going back to the 19th century. And so for a kid like me that got hooked into that history of the game, and then, by that you get into also the history of cards, and you get your first Beckett price guide, which, I kid you not, I could show you the very first Beckett I bought, and it's right here. I still have my old copy. And you start learning about those old cards. The fact that it was still even possible for a young kid with a limited budget to be able to pick up a 60, 70-year-old card, and of course, for that to become suddenly like the card of your collection, like, holy cow. And I remember I bought, a Nolan Ryan rookie card for, I think it was like $6. Things were still possible on a greater scale than, let's say, a kid today who suddenly is like, wow, I'd love to own a 52 Topps card. Even if it's a common, I would love to own a 52 Topps. It's a little harder nowadays. And I feel for the kids like that, I mean, you got some great reprint sets out there, but it's not as easy.
Yeah. Another great point I think you brought up too there, Gio, is, again, I don't like painting with a broad brush, but I think people from our era and even before, maybe a little bit after too, were more into the history of sports as well.
Sure.
Not only the players we had currently at that time, but we also went back and like, hey, who was good, before this, and what happened before this. And again, there are young folks today and collectors today that do care about the history of the game. I'm not saying that, but I'll say this: it seems like it's less of a thing now than it was when we were doing it.
I agree 1,000%, and I mean, again, I'm not trying to knock anything. Look, times change, interests change. I get it. But there is definitely a huge difference in the interest of the hit, where things came from, how things develop.
Time for a quick break, but we'll be right back.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
Let's go! You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast.
I can't, I'll be honest with you, if I may. One thing I can't stand with today's fandom, I can't stand it. And I purposely stay away from it when it comes up on Twitter or something, because I can't even control myself, is this whole lack of context anymore. Like, I can't stand when people say things like, well, Babe Ruth wouldn't do shit in today's game. Or, well, what would Stan Musial do today? Like, he wouldn't do anything against today's pitch. I can't believe this is even a discussion where the lack of context has disappeared, and everything is about downplaying the past. Everything is about downplaying the talents of it's not an argument. It's not. It's something to enjoy. It's something to appreciate, and you have to appreciate every era for what it was. And of course things develop. Of course athletes develop. But, that's not what should be the focus of the game. Everything is an argument now. Everything is to put down the past. And that's tragic, I think, because to not appreciate the history of something. It doesn't even have to be baseball, just in general. I feel this is going on, and you have to appreciate and enjoy how things developed and changed, but not to turn around and then put down these silly arguments about, it takes away from it.
Yeah, I see it too, Gio. I think some of it, and I'm not defending it whatsoever. I agree with you. With what Ohtani's done the last few years, which is incredible. Like, why can't we praise Ohtani for doing stuff that's really never been done before, without degrading Babe Ruth at the same time? You can do both. You can do both. But I think it's the era now where to praise one, we have to say, well, this guy did it this, or if he played today, he wouldn't even be anywhere near the same player. You don't have to do that. We can hype up and praise Ohtani's accomplishment and seasons without belittling someone else at the same time.
Of course.
But I think it's so easy to do, and that's why you see it. It's easy to do. And then, here's the crazy thing. So when we were younger, we cared about the past and what happened before us and researched it, right? We didn't have internet and Google. Right. We had encyclopedias. People don't even know what encyclopedias are, or books and magazines to research. To me, it would be so much easier for collectors today to find out about the past between YouTube and Google. Yeah. If we had that then, we'd know even way more than we did, or at least quicker. We'd have the information obviously quicker than it took us to gather then. So there's no excuse that I can't find this out, or there's no record, And so I don't know why it is. I mean, I guess there's just so many different things pulling people's attention away that they don't have, I guess you could say they don't have as much time, maybe free time as maybe we did. I don't even know if that's true or accurate. That's an individual kind of situation. But when I do see someone that doesn't so much really care or respect the past, that does bother me too. And if you don't know about it, that's fine. But like you said, to belittle someone's accomplishments like that, I agree with you. You don't have to do it. And frankly, it's not accurate on top of that.
Well, again, context. I mean, that's life. That's history. That's the human experience. Things are different, from different time periods. And what astonishes me is I remember getting my first Macmillan baseball encyclopedia, and like you just said, we didn't have this info at our fingertips, and getting that glorious monster book and sitting in my room with that tissue paper leafing through the pages, and the first time seeing Al Spalding and what he did during his pitching career, and seeing guys like Tim Keefe putting in 600 innings, and it's just never would there have been this inclination to turn around and kind of put it down. Oh, but it was different that well, who cares? I mean, it's just amazing to see these softball numbers and appreciate it for what it was. And you hit the nail on the head where a lot of this jumped off really was Ohtani and what Ohtani's doing. And I love Ohtani. I mean, I think what he's doing with, in the sport is incredible. Hopefully this kind of directs the game in a new direction. But at the same time, I don't understand with the wonder of Ohtani and what he's doing in baseball. There's attached this argumentative kind of needing to put other things down where, it's almost like, I don't know, maybe because we weren't there, maybe there was, I do recall, say when Babe Ruth started putting up the power numbers, in 2021, 22, there was this whole backlash with guys like Ty Cobb. Well, I could do that if I wanted. And, average was the thing. But I think with analytics, and again, I'm not an analytics guy, and, WAR and this black and white kind of these arguments I see going on, and this, being dismissive of players simply because of whatever their WAR is. I mean, to me, it's just, hey, look, I take what I want out of the sport and what I want out of the the collecting part of it. But it's also just sad because there's a lot that's being missed by people that are actually putting their time into this hobby, because it's all driven by what they feel is the be all end all, and then and prices, and you see cards come out and instantly $1,000 for a card for a guy that's never even played yet. I mean, the stuff is pretty amazing. It's amazing.
It's crazy. And when I see that, Gio, I say, how many vintage Hall of Fame rookies I could buy for the same price as what that prospect who has 0 at bats at the major league level. Yep. Like it is head scratching. It's, and here's the other thing, we can turn about as fair play, right? We see now pitchers, we see load management, right? Players get like a day or 2 off each week and don't play a full season of 162 games. Back in the day, that rarely happened unless someone was actually hurt. And a lot of times they even played hurt in a lot of cases. And pitchers now are, they hit 100 pitches and they're done and their day's done and they come out, and now, back in the day, guys like Nolan Ryan pitched 12 innings in the game if it went into extra innings and threw 175, 200 pitches, relievers even, relievers back in the day pitched 3 innings to get a save, not just come in and get 2 or 3 out. So if we want to play, today's folks want to play that game, we can do the same thing. And,
absolutely.
And,
look at Blake Snell. Yep. I mean, there's a guy that's a great example of, what today's game's about. Like, this guy just came off a Cy Young season, his second Cy Young, and we're having a hard time getting, because teams are looking at, well, dude, you can't even, you're going to put in your 5 innings, and in your mind, you did your job. But I don't want to sound like an old fart, but I definitely preferred the game when I was watching it. Like, today's game, I'm not going to lie to you, and this is something I never, ever thought I would say in my life, but I have never been more bored with the sport I love so much than today. I mean, and watching games for me is painful. I mean, it's a painful thing to watch. I mean, and I'm an American League guy. It wasn't like, a National League, like bunting and, smart ball and, but at the same time, today's game is just like, whew.
Yeah, it's different. And we've seen now they're trying to change some of the traditional rules to speed up the game, get more scoring, more steal, make the bases bigger.
Second base, extra inning. That's one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life.
That one bothers me the most. The guy that starts out at second base. Like, how did that even happen?
How did he scored? You didn't even earn your way onto the base. You're gonna get credited with a run score. Like I can't even believe we even went in that direction. Like it's mind boggling to me, some of the things.
Yeah.
But
no, I agree.
It's
all right. Yeah, I get it. I'm with you. It's almost a different sport. I mean, it isn't, but it sort of is with some of the rules. And I don't hate them all. I don't hate all the rules, but I don't like them all either. So it's somewhere.
I mean, speeding up the game. I think speeding up the game this past year was great. I mean, were all factors that led to it, something I'm for? No, not necessarily, but the fact that there was something being done to speed up the game, and all right, I think that was a step in the right direction. But it's different. I mean, it's again, change. I got to appreciate change, whether I like it or not. And getting back to collecting, which is why we're here. Like, I get it. It's different. I walk into a card shop and I'm blown away. But at the same time, someone like me, well, I still think vintage cards are still incredibly undervalued. So for someone like me, that's great, because I could, if I could move my computer, I could show you I'm surrounded by racks of binders. I have every top set back to 58, plus most of the oddball sets, most of the side sets, all the and again, I'm not some rich guy, but vintage cards relatively speaking, unless you get into grading and all that, which I'm not for, but you can pick them up, and I think that's one of the positives for someone like me, the collector I am, with this hyper focus on the modern and all the flashy new shiny objects that are coming out. So hey, while everyone's going ahead and trying to land that parallel card, that the Tom Brady Montreal Expos card that was everyone was chasing. Hey, I'll sneak in there and buy I'll go ahead and finish up my 1957 set.
No doubt. All right, I want to get into your blog, which I enjoy. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You started 13 years you've been doing this thing. Am I right?
Yeah. Oh, 2013 is when I first started posting on. I created the blog, so 11 years ago. Yeah, you're right. I was, I'm a graphic designer, almost 30 years now, and I specialize in packaging and. I worked on all the licenses you can imagine, Star Wars, Disney, Marvel, over the years. So it was just a given that eventually, I'd be getting into designing my own cards and then starting to actually print them up and have fun with packaging. So 2013, I just don't know why I really focused on the 70s, but because really, when you think about it, the 80s was my real decade of buying cards like a maniac, once I became a teen. But 70s just still held that glory of collecting. So, yeah, I started the blog 2013, just, creating cards that were missing, fixing cards that had airbrushed images and, what you see over the years, like whatever the little, I'll tell you, a big impetus to even think about anything like that. You mentioned the player. I'll never forget opening ripping packs in 1980. And I do understand it now as an adult, but in 1980, ripping packs open, me and my friends, it wasn't just me, looking for that Thurman Munson card, figuring there'd be some sort of memorial card or something.
Yeah.
And not finding it and realizing, like, holy crap, Topps didn't make a Munson card. And of course, yes, you get it. You understand it later on. At the time it was really for kids. You don't have to get into the morbid stuff. But and then, as you get older and into vintage, wow, why wasn't a 67 Koufax done? That would have been incredible. The whole idea of having a guy's whole career stats on the back. But, that's why I kind of then started creating the cards and then I think it was a few years later where I actually started doing custom cards like Stars of 1930 and 1940, special packaging. Kind of the 40 set was actually a baseball game. The 1920 set was in a candy tin. That ties into what I did for a living because, I know where to source all the stuff. I know what printers to use. And, it just went from there. And I'll be honest, where my life is at this point, which not to get into it, but it's life right now is really difficult because of the situation I have at home because my wife's ill and it's really bad. And this is, I'm not going to lie to you, it's the only thing keeping me going. It's doing what I'm doing with the blog and kind of giving me that little escape to kind of keep myself level and have my fun because the rest of my day is it's hard. And I love it. I love the friends I've made, having the little interactions on Twitter and seeing, and also seeing all the other card creators out there. I mean, it's so much fun seeing how everyone else even thinks about how they approach it, how they come up with ideas. So much of it is usually the same ideas, but just interpreted differently. And it just shows you, as baseball guys and card guys, the same things bothered us as kids when we were collecting back then, and now we're trying to fix it now. And the fact that even for people that aren't professional graphic designers, the fact that now we have ways, even for the layman, to go ahead and have these things produced, like online printers. And, these are things that even 20, 30 years ago was tough. You really had to be in the industry to be able to, go ahead and produce a set yourself, or a card yourself. So it's great. It's so much fun. I have, honestly, every day I have so much fun just seeing what other people are talking about, what they've created, even if it's just a digital, there's some great digital card guys that I follow on Twitter that are amazing, and what they come up with. And I love it. It's not a competition in my eyes. And I'm not in it for the money. Everything I do, God's honest truth, I put out at cost. As long as I can make my money back, I'm not in this for the money. I just love creating the cards, the joy of getting them in, and then putting them in my WTH Balls binders. It's there's nothing like it for me. It's so much fun, and then getting to share it with whoever wants to go ahead and pick it up from me. It's even doing something like this. This is wild. Two guys on a podcast talking about the collecting and then the history and of the sport that we love. I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah, to piggyback off a couple of things you said. First off, I'll say a prayer for your wife. I'm sorry to hear that. But like you said, this stuff is an outlet, right? It kind of replenishes you to keep going and get through your day. And everyone might have something different. A musician plays their instrument. Whatever does it for you. Different other hobbies, right? For us, this is our outlet to kind of get away from the everyday mundanes of life that naturally going to happen. That's life. And you do, don't take my word for it. At the end, I'll give you time where people can find your blog, what you do. But you do some incredible work, Gio, with the card design. I mean, the Tops and other companies could probably take a page from you. And I love how you do like cards that never were, or cards that probably should have been made. I think it shows that you care about the history of the game, and you care about the player. Like, hey, that card, and you brought up the Munson. I looked for the Munson too, and it wasn't there, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, we know kind of why. Well, we still wanted it, right? As Munson fans, as collectors, we wanted that last card. We wanted that last card. We didn't know what the last card was. We wanted that kind of close. The card almost was closure. I know that sounds weird. We never really got that.
Right.
When we opened that pack and got that last Munson card, we didn't know it was the last Munson card we were going to get. And it would have been nice to have a memorial card or a tribute card. I thought he deserved at least that as the captain of the Yankees.
And it was done before. Tops did that before. Yeah. So, Ken Hubbs and Ken
Hubbs, the
Angels pitcher, it was just a little blurb on the back. And in the 64 set, I forget. I'm blanking right now. But
I can't remember.
And even, thank God, but Roy Campanella, after his accident, they had in the 59 set the memorial, the card celebrating him, and I'll be honest, I even as in 1980, 11-year-old kid, big deal. I'm an 11-year-old kid, but I genuinely thought that was going to be a reality. I was shocked when it wasn't there. But again, I mean, decades later, it's great that I can go ahead and design one and put it out. And I love the fact that people, they come to me or they contact me and they can get it, and they could finally get it. It's a shared it's a very particular shared, want or need, or like you said, closure. And that's special. I love the fact that over the years, one of the greatest things is when family of players contact me. Right here, I could show you this right here. A one-game Major League player, Joffrey Brown on the Cubs in 1968. He appeared in one game, and then he went on to an illustrious career as an actor and Hollywood stuntman. His son saw that I created this card, which, for a chunk of years became my specialty, creating cards for guys that never had a card or whatever. And I got it printed up, and I'm about to send it out to him. And that's happened on quite a few occasions where I was actually able to help In some cases, sadly, it was for a memorial. Mark Schaefer, a pitcher that only appeared in 72 with the Padres. But I created a 73 card for him, and a family member reached out after he passed away. They wanted that printed up for the memorial service, and I was more than happy to make it happen, and
that's awesome.
And you're right. Like I do the history of the game, and it's not just about the stars, and it's all those guys that you remember, when you were religiously watching games, and a guy that made a brief appearance, and
the Doc. I call them the Doc Moonlight Grahams, but the real ones.
Think about it. Like, think of a guy like George Zieber, right? Like, that's a guy that if it wasn't for the fact he had a Topps card, would we ever back then, because social media or access to information or MLB.com every night, we had to wait for the 11 o'clock news or the Sunday morning paper, for the stats, and things were so different. If it wasn't for these guys that had that Topps card, if you didn't have a Topps card and you had a brief career, sadly, no one was going to know you. No one was going to. You were just a name in the Macmillan encyclopedia. It was so different. So all these guys, like, so much on my blog that I created these cards for these guys. It really brings that name to life. Like it gives you that image. It gives you that. Oh, that's the guy. That's And some of these guys, they even put in a half a season or 3/4 of a season. So to me, they warranted a card in that next set, in that following year's set. And they never did. So it's almost like you take it from a mythic name to make it a reality. And, there's the card. There's the guy, that I heard of.
And it's educational, and you're teaching in the process too, Gio. Like, there's someone who doesn't know about, maybe will research and learn, hey, what happened or what was the deal? And I love that fact. And then obviously, you hate to hear someone passing away, but talking about the Schaefer and the memorial card, that card will be cherished for those family members.
Well, I would hope so. I would hope
you can't put a price on. You can't put a price on. So they got the card that probably should have been made, and it was you to get it done. And
it's the best thing. It really is.
Yeah.
I love it.
And you brought some happiness to that family, happiness and joy in a sad time, right? In a sad moment.
Yeah, and even Don Baylor's nephew reached out to me, and I sent him some stuff because I created and this is Don Baylor, MVP, All-Star, certainly great star player, but even someone like that, his nephew reached out because he happened to come across. I did a 71 dedicated rookie, because he was on a multiplayer rookie card, his first card. Well, I'm big on creating dedicated rookies for players, and he reached out to me, and I was happy to send him some. And this isn't even an obscure player. This is someone that was an MVP. Like I said, it's just great.
And went on to manage it. He managed as well after his career.
I loved him. I was the perfect age when he was with the Yanks. Groove was. Along with Mattingly and Winfield and stuff, it just really, it turns this hobby that I've been obsessing over for now 45 years, and it gives it newness for me. And when you can have something that after decades you can still put new twists on it that keeps things fresh for you. Like, I got lucky that I got into this blog and I got into then producing cards, because for me on a selfish note, it kept everything fresh for me. Like getting, I got back into buying cards 2017 after selling my collection for the second, maybe third time in 2015. That's what I do. I was a big record collector. I do the same thing. I was a big book collector. That's what I do. And this time around, it was so different because getting back into cards in 2017, but now with this blog behind me, and designing my own cards, and it gave me kind of a new angle on collecting, which is kind of wild at the time. 40 years after I started collecting the first time, it's great. It keeps things fun for me, and especially now, like I said, with everything going on in my life, like, I thank God I have that. I have that ability to go in my office where I'm sitting right now, just start designing some stuff, kicking around ideas, talking to you, going on Twitter and just, looking at what other people are doing. That's worth its weight in gold,
Yeah, no doubt. You do awesome stuff. And I love, you only have to talk to you for a few minutes and you respect that past, you care about it. It comes out in what you do. And then even in some of this stuff, right, you're bringing joy in moments when there's sadness. And not a lot of people can ever say they get to do that. And you're doing it. You're teaching, you're educating in the process as well. You're kind of paying homage where, Topps or a company should have produced a card of a player they didn't, and you're sort of filling in those gaps. And not only doing that, but the work you create is amazing looking on top of that.
Thanks.
Unlike the podcast guest cards I make, which you'll have one.
I love it all. I love it all. I love it. I really mean it. Like, I love to see how people think and their interpretation of the, of the history of the game and what they take out of it. And then what is the end result? I love it. It also gets me thinking in new ways or may spark an idea that I didn't have before. And I'm like, oh man, yeah, that's great. And then I'll give my interpretation that could lead to something, or lead to a new set, or even if it's just a digital blog thread, Lord knows I only print up maybe not even 5% of everything I've ever put up online. So I love that whole interaction of ideas, because it's like, to me, it's like those days as a teenager hanging out on the corner in front of the candy store, arguing about sports for hours with my friends. This is like the new way of doing it, talking about sports in the modern age, in this new way, which is presented differently than, back then in the 80s and in the schoolyard or on the corner. Like, this is the new way to do it. And it's great because now you got some guy in Somerset, New Jersey doing it with some guy up in Syracuse, New York doing it. And, that's unheard of. Like, if you would have said that to us decades ago, you're going to be talking to some guy through the computer who's up in Syracuse, and you guys are going to be talking baseball cards. That's pretty hilarious. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't lose the fact that we do live in a great time to be able to do this,
Yeah. Well, it's like I say, I'm glad I'm glad I was kind of born when I was, because we appreciate what we grew up in, and we appreciate the convenience and the technology we have. We've lived in both of those worlds, and but where we would have to call our friends up on a rotary phone. Now we can send a text message, or we have a phone in our pocket. Who would have thought we'd ever have a phone in a pocket when we'd leave the house? Right here we are all these years
from you
later.
through Twitter or something, and hey, I do this podcast. Would you like to be on? I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome that you got this podcast going on, that you have guests and you go over this hobby, which is so important to you. That's so important to us. You know, it's great. It really is.
It is. Well, Gio, listen. We could probably do 3 hours. We'll have to do it again. We'll have to bring you back. We'll do it again. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate your love and passion for the hobby, and kind of, I'll say it like this, like trying to make things right. Maybe things that should have happened that didn't happen. It'd be easy to, anyone can sit on their hands and just watch, right, and be a spectator. And you're getting in there and trying to make a difference and make a change and doing things you feel like should have been done in the original time. And there's something to be said about that when someone is like that. And so, keep doing it. I enjoy it, and as many others do as well. I always give the guests kind of the final say. Give out where people can see your work, your blog, any social media you want to share. Take your time.
The blog is if you just Google when Topps had balls, it'll come up. Again, it's every day there's a new post. I haven't missed a day. It's 10 years running. Oh, more. Going on 11 years now. Every day is a new post. I already got the next year's worth of posts mapped out. I'm obsessive about it. And then on Twitter.
Dedicated.
Yeah. On Twitter, it's at WTH Balls. Follow me there and reach out to me. Any ideas? Anyone has any ideas that you don't think I tackled? I welcome ideas. I love it. I've actually gotten a lot of my ideas from people reaching out to me. Hey, why didn't you do this? Or you should do this. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it great. And again, I appreciate all of you that I've met over the years doing this. Like, it really has made this 40 plus year hobby of mine new. And I cherish that. Like, just meeting all of you, talking to you guys, it's so much fun. And it helps me in my day to day, so I appreciate all the interest and support, and let's see how much longer I can keep it going.
keep it going, Gio.
Yeah.
And again, appreciate you. Thanks for making some time for the show today, and we'll do it again too. If you come back, we'll do it again.
I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for Gio for coming on. By the way, that's my favorite Gio, but great guy, fellow Brooklynite, doesn't mince words, calls it like he sees it, and I appreciate guys like that because I try to be like that myself. So we'll have him back on in the future, and appreciate him coming on. Check out his blog, by the way.
Time for our Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week.
Hey everybody, I'm Gary Denier, Thumbs Down Guy. This is the Sports Card Nation podcast. The hobby is for people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People Announcer of the Week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
That's a wrap for this week. Huge thanks to you, the listeners out there, because without you, there is no us. If you like the show, we truly appreciate positive reviews. Big ups to our great guests who drive the show and our awesome sponsors who make it all possible. Sports Card Nation will be back next week, but don't forget to catch either Hobby Quick Hits or Card Mentions coming up on Monday. I'll leave you with this. How do we change the world? One random act of kindness at a time. Remember, the hobby is the people.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.